Pete's laughing because Pete's like, that guy's going to need rods and pistons. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Drag Racing Friends, episode number 8, the Horsepower Edition. I am super excited about this one because, as everybody knows, I am a horsepower junkie. There is nothing more fun than being on the dyno, seeing horsepower being made. And unlike a lot of folks, I am purely about horsepower. Naturally aspirated, nitrous, boost of all kinds. I like all of it. And in fact, I usually say that if you only use one power adder, it better be because the rules say so. Otherwise, you should always add nitrous to everything. Barrett, what are your thoughts? What's your favorite? What do you love most?
I mean, without a doubt, like the king of kings is going to be, blown nitro. I mean, but you're not ever really going to see that outside of like a top fuel type of, NHRA event. So,
right.
A step down, like big cubic inch nitrous is it for me. I mean, there's nothing like the sound of one of those cars rolling through the water box and just sitting there idling and just letting it ride.
Boom, boom,
yeah,
boom,
just
boom, boom.
zoomies
boom.
crackling.
You hear every cylinder hitting individually.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and we're talking 950 to 1,000.
Oh, yeah. It's got to just crackle. I mean.
Yeah. So, our special guest for this episode is none other than the H in HED, Peter Harrell, out of Morrisville, North Carolina. Pete, glad to have you on board, brother.
Yeah, guys, it's going to be fun.
Mr. Up Arrow.
So you are, you are known for your up arrow manipulation. You tune cars all over the country at all different kinds of races. And most of the time those are HED customers who have purchased an engine from you. They have you working on their engine combo and then also tuning their car. You've tuned it all though, right?
Yeah. I've tuned pretty much everything. I'm just like most engine builders, I would say, of my age. We didn't all start doing turbos because in my early years, turbos were kind of a rarity,
Right.
And back then you had, everybody had nitrous, and that's pretty much all there was, Occasionally you'd see, blown alcohol stuff, but, nitrous was commonplace. So that's, if you didn't know how to work that a little bit, you weren't really doing much.
So, over the years, tuning nitrous cars, blower cars, building naturally aspirated combos for guys, have you developed a favorite or do you care?
Well, I'll say this. I don't really care. I feel I have more expertise tuning turbo stuff. So because of that, I tend to go in that direction because that's probably where I'm going to be able to give my customer the best bang for the buck. But I don't really care. And a lot of times the engine builder in me, sometimes I fantasize and sit around and think about, boy, it would be cool to build see how much I can get out of a stock set of LS3 heads on motor. I think we can do this with these. I never really get to do that because I can't find anybody to finance my ridiculous ideas. But the natural aspirated is fun because to me it's a little bit more of a challenge for the engine builder.
Well, and okay, I love that you brought that up because for full disclosure, anybody that's watching and has been living under a rock, you and I were both part of Team Biggin the first year of the 10K drag shootout and last year, the second year. Where we won with beer money the first year and we did not win with the Moonshine Missile this last year. But I jokingly referred to you as a beer-powered CNC machine because I have seen you whittle away cylinder heads like none other. Like nobody else has done on the show. You spent so much time just working on cylinder heads in order to make power, and we made the most power both years in our combos. What is it about like doing something that's so tedious and meticulous as cylinder heads that you like to do?
Well, when I started out, I kind of started out as I considered myself a cylinder head guy, right? Because back then, let's say when you're talking about nitrous or whatever, as everybody knows, the cylinder head is where you get all your power from. So one of the first machines I ever bought was a JKM flow bench. And it's an excellent machine, and that's where I got my start. I would take a set of Ford heads back in the day and just experiment. And I tell people for the first 10 years of my career, I rode that thing around all day, every day, 12 hours plus a day, literally.
Right.
And it's to the point now where I don't really ever flow heads anymore I guess for multiple reasons, but partly because I know the overriding principle of how the thing works, and I kind of know what I want to do. Right. And then at some point, I also came to understand that there's more to it than flow. There's cross section and other things that, in a lot of cases, are actually more important. So the thing evolved, but so I started off there before I got into turbos and such, and I don't know. That's kind of how the cookie crumbles with that.
It's pretty much a lost. I feel personally like that's a kind of a lost art nowadays. Like a lot of the CNC stuff is taken over, and the Faro machines and everything. But for some reason, all of a sudden you just go back. Like used to be, there's only a handful of people that hand ported cylinder heads, and man, you had a ported head. Woo! Look at that thing.
Right. Well, there's something that's been lost in that nowadays. In almost all the time, the engine builder and the head porter are no longer the same guy anymore.
Yeah.
And the cylinder head guys, because they're just cylinder head guys, a lot of times they, in my opinion, kind of lose perspective on what they're doing a little bit in some cases, because they look at it as just purely flow. If they're not the guy who's ultimately responsible for the end power output, well, then they look at it from, all right, we've got to jack these flow numbers up so we can sell heads.
Yeah.
Right.
Got to look good in the catalog.
Right. Yep. And the result of that, a lot of times, is, especially with turbo and blower guys, they buy the great big heads. Next thing you know, the thing breaks after 3 passes because there's nothing left of the thing.
Yeah.
It's huge. It may flow another 10 CFM, but it will not stay together. So there's a disconnect between the cylinder head crowd and the engine builder a little bit.
Well, and now there's 2 ways that cylinder head ports get developed, right? So one is completely computer generated, using fluid dynamics programming and all of these things, right? And they're using computer aided modeling in order to make these ports.
Right.
And then on the other side is the way that things were always done, which is an actual dude sitting there porting on heads and porting on them and testing them, porting on them and testing them. And when I took this out, it got worse, so they epoxy it back in there, right? And they adding and taking away and doing all these things until they end up with the ultimate port, at which point the Faro arm comes in and then measures it. So the difference is that in those kinds of scenarios, right, at a place like Dart or AFR or whatever where somebody is doing that, the problem is, or not the problem, but the sad fact is, that the dude that used to be famous because he was Darren Morgan or he was Peter Harrell or whoever that was an awesome cylinder head porter, that guy is now some dude in the warehouse that nobody ever gets to see, right?
I'm trying to think.
Yeah, there's a lot of
who was the
nameless
AFR
heroes,
guy?
I guess you'd say.
Do what?
I say, who is the AFR guy? Like, if you had AFR...
Tony Mamo.
Yeah.
Tony Mamo.
Yeah. Like, you got AFR heads? Cool. You got Mamo AFR heads? Yeah. Like,
oh yeah,
we're going fast.
And Mamo has his own cylinder head porting company now and everything, and because he wanted to do things differently than they wanted to do them at AFR, and so he decided to leave. But they're those guys were heroes, right?
Yeah.
And now, I mean, most of them you would never know if there is a dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's that shift between like manufacturing a product and look, hey, this is where we need to be. These heads are going to hold up. They're going to work for a variety of applications. And then you have okay, now we're going to do this specific build. And obviously, his deal was, I want to go with the specific stuff. And AFR's like, hey, we want to crank out a lot of cylinder heads.
Right. Well, and so, Pete, you talked about flow and how that's not the end-all, be-all. Here's one thing that I think is lost on the general public when they look at dyno test results or whatever, and I've spent a considerable amount of time in a dyno cell, and I feel very fortunate to have done that at West Tech Performance Group, and I love being there. One of the things that I think people don't realize or think about is that, with incredibly rare exception, and I mean I'm talking like 0.001% of the time, the more power you make naturally aspirated, the more power you will make when you add nitrous or boost or anything else. The base combination, if you want to make ultimately the most power you can, the base combination, the more you start with, you're just adding on top of that. Why do you think that people forget that?
Well, I'd say in some cases they forget it because with turbos, it's just become so easy just to bolt on just exponential power, and that just I guess maybe in some ways it's a little bit too easy. So
right,
that'd probably be what I say there.
That's kind of how we've come to the point where we have 5.3 bore space motors. Like, hey, we're spraying 2, 3, 4 kits. Like, well, it's kind of slowing down when we spray that third or fourth kit until it reaches back up. Like, it's kind of got a little slowdown there. Let's build a bigger motor.
Yeah.
It's make more power. Just
yeah.
get it bigger.
Well, that's why with turbos, a lot of times the turbo engine builder's job isn't so much about making, figuring out how to make another 15 horsepower. It's about figuring out how to make it live with the next turbo that comes out.
Yeah.
Because you buy a new turbo and all of a sudden the same dimension turbo makes 400 more horsepower.
Yeah.
Well, that puts a lot of more demand and stress on the engine. So that's the job of the turbo engine builder. A lot of times.
Well, and the interesting thing about that is that I get asked a lot about turbos. I know you do, Pete. Probably different question though, because the circles you're hanging out with are typically more educated people about it. But I always tell everybody, whatever engine your turbocharger is bolted to, whatever given turbo it is, whatever the power potential of the turbocharger is how much that thing can make, as long as it's able to hang. Right? So if the crank rods and pistons are in for the fight, like if they're like, I'm with you, buddy, I'll be there for you, then the turbo will make the power it's going to make, right?
To a certain extent, yeah. There are limitations, like if the motor, years ago, all the turbo motors were really low compression, and that just tanks horsepower. They'll live forever, but it's shooting it down a little bit, But generally speaking, you're right.
And along those lines of giving up the ghost or staying with it or hanging with it, let's watch our Insanity segment video, because that's the link I sent you in the chat there, because this is going to be a pretty good one to watch, given the subject. Oh!
What'd you do?
Wow. What have you done?
Yeah, I've seen that dude before. It's tough.
Yeah. Pete's laughing because Pete's like, that guy's going to need rods and pistons. Yeah. I got a line on
He's going to need a lot.
Dude, how in the hell is it that, we have seen some absolutely crazy stuff over the years of stuff blowing up, but some of it is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. Well, with the power production capabilities of these bigger and badder turbos and blowers and whatnot, therefore, with that comes the ability to have more intense destruction, I guess you could say.
He says it, the ability to have more intense destruction, like that's a cool byproduct.
It's a virtue.
It's a virtue, exactly.
Yeah, it's, hey, a recipe for disaster. Let's add some boost, some timing, and a shitload of alcohol.
Oh my God, yes.
Right.
Oh, some for the drivers, some for the engine builders, some for the car. Oh my God. Well, so does it, the perception, okay, in the horsepower world, in the hot rodding world, a lot of the racing world, right? Nitrous is super dangerous, or turbos are, blow stuff up, or blowers do this. Like, why is it that every power adder seems to have some kind of, like, I don't know, image problem with a certain segment thinks it's just bad?
Well, I think maybe some of that comes from the early days. Let's say, look, when turbos started to get big, the motors were all a certain way. They were low compression, and because of that, they developed a reputation of being lots of power and they never tear up. And it was true, but nowadays, that doesn't cut the mustard anymore. You need more of a motor to keep up within a given class. So things have changed. Now turbo guys tear up stuff just like nitrous guys. Maybe they don't, nitrous guys don't realize that, but they do.
Lifting heads.
And a lot of times it's different stuff that tears up. Maybe the nitrous guys tearing up a lot of pistons, or we're tearing up blocks.
Yeah, torching heads and all kinds of stuff.
Right, yeah. I think everybody tears up stuff nowadays,
So is there a let's say roots blower, centrifugal like a Procharger, turbo, are any of those three easier on an engine in your opinion at real power levels?
Well, if you talk to any upper level blown alcohol mechanical fuel injection guy, they will pretty much every top level, of which I'm not one, but of the top guys that I've talked to with that, they will all universally say that a screw is easier on the motor than a blower, than a roots blower, right? Even though it makes 1,000 horsepower or whatever more, it's easier on stuff, right? So
less parasitic.
There's that. Yeah. Well, the motor generally has, because it has more boost capability, they run less compression.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And for whatever reason, the thing is just happier, and as far as the nitrous goes, I don't know.
Yeah,
they're all capable of tearing stuff up.
People are hard on pot. It's like, that shirt, people don't, or nitrous doesn't kill pistons, people kill pistons. It's like,
yes.
Yeah. Hey man, we got the, the two jerker next round. Like, let's peel it up, let's see what we can do,
And I'm so glad you said that, Barrett, because that's a great transition into something. So
for the record, that was not planned at all.
No, but this was awesome because, so Pete, well that I always ran multiple kits of nitrous on Daphne's wagon and all those things. But when we got where we were building the Moonshine Missile, you guys did the nitrous system completely different than I had ever considered it, and my mind was blown by this. So we used a NOS nitrous launcher on the missile. It allows you to have 2 stages of nitrous. Mm-hmm. Okay, Barrett? So, but both of them can be progressive.
Yeah.
What we did was you put 1 stage on the fuel side and 1 stage on the nitrous side, and then that way you control the maximum percentage on your progressive to jet the thing up and down on fuel versus nitrous. Yeah. And also by playing with fuel pressure on the fuel side, you could change things, right? So that was the big difference, was playing with the fuel pressure on that side and then progressively adding the nitrous to get where you wanted to be, because we weren't running it at maximum, amount. You put a bunch of jet in it, but you don't use it all.
You kind of throttle it back a little bit.
And I love that.
Right, and in our case, we went ahead and put pretty big jets in it because we didn't want to get into a situation where we had, medium-sized jets, and then somebody pops one off real fast, and then we got to change jets and completely trash our front half tune-up.
Yeah.
So by putting the big ones in there, we can just control it with the progressive, and if we have to turn it up down track, we just give it more percentage.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of so I would say not necessarily standard practice, but that's what a lot of people, do. I mean, we're not too far removed from square jet tune-ups and everything else, like our just, I gotta add a fogger and put it on digisets and everything else. Like, we like, oh, this is the way to do it now with computers. And it's like, we totally forgot how we did it 5 or 6 years ago. Like, who run a square jet plate? Like, that's crazy.
Right. And that's exactly why I'm saying it, Barrett. Yeah. Like, my experience was either a wet plate that was just all in, right? Yeah. There was no progressive. Or everything progressive I've done, with rare exception, is all been dry nitrous with EFI, right? I tell the Holly, add this much more fuel to that bitch and let's eat. And so now when I put the nitrous on the car this time, I put the maximum amount of jet in it that I would want to run. Yeah. And went, okay, I'm only going to give it 50% to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's easier, like, a lot of people will try to run, like, even an NOS Mini or something like, oh, man, I left on 12%. Like, chill, you didn't, but cool story, bro. It's easier to dial it down with it, the driver's only running 2 sets. So that, there are some tips and tricks and stuff, but that's definitely...
Well, and there's a percentage, right? 0 to 100 doesn't actually exist. It's somewhere around 20 or 25 to about 70. When you get to 70 or 75%, it's all in. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So you got to know that somewhere, again, 70, 80%, it depends on how much nitrous you're spraying and all that. But you got to know that your window is actually smaller in there, Yeah.
I can't get it to leave. I'm on 12%. Let's go to 6. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's not your problem. So, Pete, what do you think? What do you think is the next deal? I mean, what do you know as well as I do that things go through these cycles, right? I mean, recently we had Kenny Hubbard, Kenny Hanna, who we actually were going to maybe get on the show here tonight. He recently went from Nitrous to Procharger, and everybody was like, oh my God, like that dude's been a nitrous guy forever. And he went to a blower and he's like, this is awesome. You don't have to fill bottles.
Yeah, right. Well, I don't know what's next, but I will say this, it seems like maybe a few years ago, I used to hear all the time that, nitrous is done. It's on the way out. They can't keep up anymore. And, of late, it seems to me there's been quite a bit of a nitrous resurgence here. Some of those guys have really figured some stuff out, and they're going way faster now than I would have. So look at Marcus, the fastest radial car in the world's a nitrous car.
Yeah,
and fair point.
What more you need to say?
Weight is not all of it, but they're able to get those cars light enough now where they're competitive.
Yeah,
and they're going to run front of the pack in the summer. Bam, like it bet on Bert.
Right.
Get on down the fall, you start getting some negative mine shaft type stuff, like you're going to get run on by. But that's just how it goes.
But I think that is a big key. I think that one of the reasons that I think there has been a slight resurgence in the nitrous movement is because of no prep racing. Because no prep lends itself real well to a nitrous combo, right? Because you can leave the thing soft, you can add kits as you go, what have you. I think that a lot of that has made it so guys are going, wait a second, on the hot racetrack, I can get this radial car down the racetrack with nitrous easier than I can if it was a blower combo or a turbo combo in the heat.
Well, yeah, weighs 2150. I mean, you ought to be able to get it down the track.
Right. So I think all of those things add up to. I don't think there's been a better time to be a horsepower freak than there is now.
Well, I think that, let's say, if we're talking about anything on the horizon, I think all that stuff isn't so much which power adder, but just power management in general. Whether you're talking about nitrous or turbos, the stuff we're doing with transmissions and converters nowadays to manage power is where the big gains are being made, in my opinion.
And the lockup torque converters were, really came around with the turbo cars. But you're hearing about lockup converters being put in a lot of other combos now.
Yeah, you hear a grudge car go down the track and it sounds like it got a 6-speed in it. You're like,
yeah.
Oh boy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's made these cars so much faster, and and that has nothing to do with how much power it makes. It just makes it way more efficient.
I mean, it's crazy too. Like, a couple weekends ago, we have a local race here. It's local to Texas, but Pro Mods versus Fuel Altered. Anything goes Pro Mod, anything goes Fuel Altered. There's like one or two fuel motors in some of these, Fuel Altereds. Everywhere it's pretty much alcohol. Ferris went 344 at 230. Like,
yeah.
And it didn't look like it did anything. It went like 830 to the 60 foot or something, but it doesn't look fast. And all of a sudden you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And like we are almost eclipsing that with some of these other cars, like Big Block Nitrous 355. Like it's getting there.
Oh yeah.
And it looks
like
look
who has joined us.
Who has
the one and only Eric Dillard.
Uh-huh.
Can you hear us?
What's going on, guys? Yeah. Can you hear me good?
How are you, brother?
Awesome. Good, man. Hanging in there.
We got Peter Harrell on. You can't see Pete. He's over here where the map is. His camera isn't working, but and Barrett Green up here.
What's up?
Hey, Eric.
How you doing, guys?
We've just been talking about, naturally aspirated horsepower versus nitrous versus turbos, blowers, etc. Pete was just making a point that, nowadays the production of power has become so not easy. He didn't use the word easy, but there's so much technology and so much availability of power. But now managing that power has become, so much more critical, and there are so many more systems for doing that. When you got started, when Proline was this fledgling, company, I remember very well covering drag races that you were running the silver Corvette. When nobody knew what a 481X was. Everybody had thought, oh, that's just a thing that they built and then nobody ran. In essence, it's the world's greatest big block Chevrolet, which obviously makes me happy. I'm a Chevrolet guy to the core. But you took that combo that everybody had sort of went, oh, Hemis are the only thing. And you brought that thing to the forefront at a whole lot of levels. Did you ever think it would be as big as it is now, though?
No, not at all. No, it was a wild ride. The funny part about it was actually sitting in that car when we met Roger. Roger was about an hour from Proline, and we met him through one of our Middle Eastern friends when he was trying to do like a worldwide Pro Mod tour. And that car had already been started. The motor was already sitting in the car as kind of like a mock-up long block. And when we met Roger, it just had a 41X in it. We didn't even know what it was. And we're like, well, we'll use everything you have and just start from here, and hopefully it works out. That's how the 41X started for us. It was just by chance.
Now, we were talking to Pete about, naturally aspirated horsepower versus nitrous blowers, boost, turbo, whatever, any of your boost choices. And he spent years and years as a cylinder head guy, right? So making power with an NA combo, he described as being so satisfying in a lot of ways. What is it that drives you guys to make power? And do you like naturally aspirated stuff? I know it's not your norm, but what about in the shop? Do you like that stuff?
No, we do. I mean, we've had a few opportunities through the years of customers that had a boosted car with us that wanted to do some type of NA class or want to do something different. And it's just a fun project for all the guys to put their heads together and try something different, because we learn a lot. That's what it's all about. So stuff that we didn't know a lot about, and everybody got to kind of do their own research and learn some new stuff. And it's not our strong point. But you put enough good people together and, ask the right questions and phone a friend, and before you know it, you've got a pretty good combination. So, we've done that a few times over the years, but most of it has been all based around just the higher boost stuff. And for us, it's been more about keeping them together than it's been about just trying to make more power for the most part of that whole interim. It wasn't about, how to make more. It was like the turbos came out and made more. The blower made more. It was how do we keep this thing together and keep it where the guy can keep going up and down the racetrack.
That's what Pete had just said actually as well, that now it's, now it's not, oh, I want to make more power. It's, I need to make sure this thing is going to live, because when the next turbo comes out that'll make 400 more at the same boost level,
right,
I got to keep the heads on it. I got to keep the crank in it, all those things. As an engine builder, you're in a unique position, right? Pete builds engines and tunes them for a bunch of racers. You build engines and tune them for people, but you also drive, right? So is there ever a part of your engine builder brain that's going, oh my God, this just doesn't seem right?
Oh, it does. Yeah, you put them together and then you go out there and have to drive it, and I'm so conscious the whole time of everything I'm doing in the car, because I know, it only takes this little mistake to change the outcome of that run. So no, it does for sure. It's hard to drive them when you know what all goes into it. But at the end of the day, you just keep working hard to keep them together, and it's amazing. It is amazing these days what these things will handle, and the effort everybody's put into it to what they'll support. We're over there dynoing them, and we're dyno now more than we race because of what's going on in the world. So our dynos next doors, that hub dyno is like every day, and you hear that thing at our shop. It's the same thing. You're on that hub dyno, the car's not even moving, and you're just listening to everything and seeing everything, but you're not going anywhere. So you're even that much more aware of listening to the engine and the abuse it's going through. And it's a weird feeling.
I've kind of seen it over the years, especially in radio racing. I know you guys have customers in all forms of racing stuff, but it's like a program. Like, it's not just, hey, we're going to sell you a motor, see you later, call us when you need to freshen up. Like, we're at the track, we're taking care of these cars. We're like, hey, we're developing this turbo with these guys and stuff, and this is a package we're trying to get going. Let's try it, see how it works out. Okay, something broke, bring it back to the shop. We'll get it fixed. We'll get it going. And that's...
Right. And we have... Yeah, that's really where... That's our strong point, is the whole package and the delivery from even the car build to us taking it to the racetrack and manage it, supporting the tuning, the crew. I mean, we do it all. It's more of I even say sometimes it's kind of like a concierge service for drag racing. And we are in a more niche thing that we do, but there's certain clientele that wants that. We know plenty of
people that are somewhat local to us that are that way. They just write the check. Write the check racing is fantastic for them and stuff, and that's what they do. They race at their level, they have fun with it, and Sunday they fly home and go back to their business, and it's like, hey, call me whatever you need,
Right. Yep. That's definitely what we've catered to over the years.
It's funny because when we did the 10K drag shootout shows, Pete was on the team with me and Team Biggin, and so we, we're working on building these cars and everything else. And one of the interesting things about it was when it was time to go race the car, this time because the fire and all the stuff, and we had to race in Georgia, the difference between our team and the rest of the teams was we had multiple cars to race. Like, we were going there to race all the other crap that we have to race, right? Yeah. So we're telling them, like, dude, you're pitting us for the show, a half a mile away from where the dart is.
Yeah, the two jerkers here, and y'all are way over there.
Oh, yeah. And I'm like, Pete has, how many cars did you have to tune at Georgia, Pete? Like 7?
There's usually 6 or 7. I don't remember how many it was this last time, but there's always a handful.
Yeah, and so Pete's, doing his job, right?
Well, I was hardly over with the missile at all this time.
I know, because you were actually doing real work, know? So
I thought
we literally were calling him on the phone, and Biggin's like, I think this is the tune we should do, and Pete's like, yeah. All right.
Oh.
Sounds good.
Yeah, my dumbass thought you guys were pitted by where y'all normally pit. So I walked down there and was like, where's the car? And they're like, way over there. I was like, shit,
way
taxi! I'm looking for a golf cart. Like, let a fat boy get a ride here.
It's funny, though, because if you go to a race and you're focused on your, on your one car, right? You've got your car there, you're racing it, you're tuning it, you're doing whatever, no matter what the level is. Great. But when you go and you are a part of a team that, has, this car, the Tooth Jerker, right? And then Mark Rogers, insanely badass little Mustang, and you got Justin Martin's car, and everybody has their own crew for each car, but then there's the guys that are floating, right? That are kind of helping.
Yep.
And then Pete, who's but he's got 16 different data logs coming from everybody, and he's in the RV pecking away on the up arrow, and throw more timing and more fuel and more boost at it, and it'll be fine. And it's a whole other level of responsibility for you guys. Your team is in the same position. Like that has to be a little bit nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah, and there's always one. If there's 6, there's 2 that aren't going to be happy, and they're not going to be happy as the other 4, right? So
you could have one car that
can't provide that same service to everybody.
You could set records with 3 cars, but there's going to be 2 guys that are pissed.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what we've had to get. Like we have tuners, but then we have a tuner that might be really a tuner, really just support guy, helper that's at least there after the run pulling data, because a lot of our customers don't even get involved in any of that stuff. So they just want to see somebody when the run's over, like, hey, somebody's here, somebody's pulling data, there's attention being put on my car. That might be going to a pool of, like, they're pulling 2 or 3 data logs and it's going in one trailer and they're all in there, divvying up the data and going through everything. But it's just keeping that attention on each client, and if not, we get that Monday feedback and it ain't pretty. Or you might get it
there's
Sunday
always
too.
a joke about like, oh shit, y'all burned that one up good, like knock some pistons in it and holler at me, I'm gonna go hit a cheeseburger, but like we joke about it. I mean, but that's racing, like shit happens, but you get people that understand that. They're like, man, really burn it up, like, can we get another one? Like, what's the deal here? Like,
Yep, you got some that just want to fix it. You got some that are crawling.
I enjoy, Ronnie Hobbs and stuff, and I think he broke testing, or I think he broke it. He broke his car in Florida before the Georgia race, and drove all the way to, he's like, well, I just don't have extra Proline sitting around, so he had to go all the way, get one, and then come back to race. And I was like, hey, there you go, get it.
But it's the service matters, though, right? And it doesn't matter whether you have, HED or Proline or some little, tiny engine builder from your local town that builds a motor for you. The relationship with your engine builder matters. And I think it matters even more when you start getting into the extremes, right? If you're building an engine that's a 700 horse big block for a bracket car, it needs to live and it needs to go 100 passes or 200 passes for the year, and then take it apart, put rings and bearings in it, hone the thing, and send it back out, right? But that's not what you two are doing. You guys have made at Proline, your name has obviously been the turbocharged combos. In the last couple of years, you guys have added
Procharger.
Both the Procharger, which you and I have had extensive discussions on how different that is on the car. And then you also have some clients that are running the screw blowers on stuff because you've helped develop some of the fuel injection for that with your Fuel Tech brand. But, Nitrous, I've never seen you guys do a Nitrous combo. Has there ever been a Proline Nitrous combo? Or are you just like, no, we don't want the bottle?
Seen it.
No, back in the Orska days, we freshened a lot of the guys that still use Fulton, but say they needed something quick over the weekend, or they all had a relationship with Doug, which is my business partner, which is really the machining side of our business. So we would do a lot of like Fulton and freshen ups back then. This is back in the Jack Barfield VIP days. We'd work on all their stuff if they needed something in a hurry, but other than just quick service work, we've never built a from scratch nitrous motor at Proline.
So then that goes to my next question. What's the biggest engine you guys have ever built?
The one that we freshened for somebody that we didn't build originally was one of the biggest. But our 670 lineup, when we were doing those 5-inch deals, those were definitely our biggest, like, a branded Proline engine that we built from scratch. And that was back when there were no fluid dumps. Converters that would spool on the bottom and still go on the top weren't a thing, so if you wanted to spool a tight converter, you had to build a big motor, so that's where that motor derived from, was just because the technology wasn't there in the torque converter and the transmission to allow us not to build that big of a motor. And it worked, it worked for us for a long time. But really, other than those, we haven't really built anything much bigger than that. E-Canoe had this one-off 5300 built by Musi that was 648 cubic inches, 5300 bore space for that 4-door Lexus that they flipped over. And we freshened that for them once when they were still racing it, and sold it for them to a guy out, like a no prep guy out in California, bought it about 6 months ago. So, but that was a pretty interesting one because it's a full on water 300 bore space deal. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, the 670 was definitely our kind of the one we built. That was actually one that we built from scratch.
I can only imagine who in California would want some sort of one-off piece like that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Pete, what's the biggest engine you've built?
Well, I would say the same as Eric, freshening some kind of a nitrous deal,
Right.
And back when we would do a few of those that were probably not even that big. This is years ago. So by today's standards, now those things are just huge,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I ask. I mean, today's nitrous combos, at the biggest level, are 950, cubic
Plus,
inches. What is it?
right.
959 is the normal now.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Right. And usually when people bring me some kind of, it's a turbo motor and they want me to help them, a lot of times the first thing I do is take stroke out of it, nowadays, because we're trying to turn the thing more. And like Eric said, we got the converter, technology and fluid management to do that, to manage it. So, a lot of times we're trying to make the motor a little smaller, at least.
Yeah,
recently.
like now it's like sub 500 cubic inch big blocks is like pretty standard.
Yeah, right. Well, look at Mark Rogers, 281,
Dude.
Shoo.
I
Time and chain
I-
Awesome.
Dude, that and here, let me explain something to you guys too. So, I met Mark Rogers years ago now, when I was in town in Charlotte announcing an event, and came up to Biggin's shop just to hang out and drink beer one night. And he said, "Hey, we're at the racetrack. Come over to Mooresville to the drag strip, which is around the corner, right?" So I go over to the drag strip. Never been to Mooresville Dragway. Roll in the gate, say hi. Find Biggin and them. Everybody's just sitting around drinking, having a good time, except Mark, because he's racing his car, right? And they say, "Oh, he has a mod motor car with a turbo on it or whatever." And I'm like, "You're an idiot. Do you not understand that their 10-foot long timing chain is a bad idea, And again, it's the Chevrolet guy. I'm just busting his balls. I'm making fun of him. And he's laughing. Well, dude, that little bastard has just got faster and faster and faster over the years. And so I have to love it because now we're friends and I've known him for so long. But it is crazy how quick and how much power that stupid little engine is making. It's nuts.
That scenario you just described is kind of flip-flop for me, because when I first started helping Mark, I said the same thing. I said, "You got to get rid of this pile of junk, put some push rods in here and move on from this." And he never would, or, it was going to be expensive to change everything, and it just never happened. And then, more recently, he's like, "We need to get rid of this thing and put push rods in here." And I'm like, "You've got the fastest car in Ultra, and now you want to change it up."
Yeah.
But now we've kind of worked all the problems out. And when he does have problems, they're not specific to a modular motor. So now it's bearing fruit, and it's, a bad time to jump ship, I think.
Yeah, now they got a couple of timing chains in there.
Yeah.
Right.
So so that's a good one. Like, Dillard, do you have a Mark Rogers? Do you have a customer that was the guy that had something weird, or was the lower budget team or something that you guys have just helped throughout the years and seen them be successful, that's just been one of those fun relationships to build?
Honestly, one of the fun ones was doing the Radio Versa World deal with Keith LS. That was a blast, because that started all the way back with the cast block, because we were waiting on a billet block to be made, and then we got the billet block, and then you start bending crankshafts, and like just going through that whole process with him was a lot of fun, because that thing wasn't up for what we were putting it through at all. We got it there. We could put 100 runs on it and beat on it, but it took a while, and he's obviously a blast to do it with. So that was a lot of fun. But these Lamborghinis have been fun too. We do those deals for underground, and the amount of power those guys make with those things is absolutely unbelievable. And if you sat there in our shop and looked at cast block and a cast head and the head gasket they use and the piston and the rod, and you just looked at everything, you would not. And we told you the fuel numbers they move and the boost they make. It just doesn't even make sense. Like it.
And they just drive them around like it's nothing, too.
So one of the things that a lot of people probably don't know is that when Larson and I built the S10 truck, we partnered with you guys, Proline combo in the truck, and we went with a 5-inch bore space Brodix setup because we had to have water in it since we were driving it on the street. We worked so closely with you guys on that, and it was awesome. We really appreciate the support on that. But Carrie, who I always say to him and everybody else is the guy that keeps all of your stuff moving at your shop.
Yep.
He is your parts manager.
Yep.
He knows every single thing that is happening in your shop at every minute because he knows what parts need to be going to where. And Carrie and I talked almost daily for like 6 months, right?
Yep.
Such an awesome human being. Like, he is such a cool dude. He's so fun to be around. When he told me about the Lamborghini stuff the first time, he's like, you can't talk about this. Like, you can't tell anybody about this. Because at the time, he was like, we're figuring out a relationship here, and I don't know what's supposed to be public or not. So don't say anything because I don't want Dillard mad at me,
Right.
But he was so excited about it, too, which is weird, right? I mean, dude, we're so used to big V8, American engines, and for that, it was just crazy. But to see your enthusiasm is pretty neat.
Yeah.
Oh, they're fun. They're fun cars, and they're if you ever get the chance to go to one of these half-mile events and let one of them take you for a ride, I don't care what race car you've ever driven, and I've driven a lot. When you sit in the passenger seat of one of those ones they take to that half-mile event, when you're not in control, it is unreal. Like, it's just like, you just can't imagine something accelerate that
You talk
fast.
about...
it's so crazy when you're holding on versus driving.
Talk about catering to clientele. Like, you go to some of those half-mile deals, like with Lambos and all that other stuff out there, like, they got porta potties that got like marble floors and air conditioning and all kinds of stuff. I walked in, one was like,
my house is
what is this? Yeah. It's crazy.
It's funny you talk about that, though, riding shotgun. So when I got my pro stock license at Roy Hill School, Hank Hill was my main instructor, right? Him and Roy. And you guys know Hank, and he's such a character, right?
Yeah. I couldn't imagine Hank and Roy together. I never got to experience that, but that had to be something.
Dude, I have to tell you, like, I'll tell you a bunch of cool Roy Hill stories later, but the Hank was good for me to keep me focused so I didn't kill Roy. But he also just made stuff so fun, right? So a couple of things that were entertaining with him was he put me in their 2-seat pro stock Mustang and, did a burnout and a launch before you ever get in the car and drive it. And so we run an 8th mile pass, right? And he turns to me after he, pulls the chute and slowing down. What do you think of that? I said, I think it's great, but I ain't ever sitting on this side of the damn car ever again. Like, I don't care. You can ride shotgun with me all you want, but I am out. Not doing that. That is not cool. And Hank laughed. He thought it was just hilarious,
Anybody that knows me knows I don't ride in nobody's car. I ain't doing it. No way.
Nope. He won't.
I'll drive her. That's it.
That's it. But it's hilarious because Pete, though, knows that when he's with any of us, he's so used to not driving because somebody's always driving the van or the whatever that he don't even get in the front. He just gets in the back. Like, I have seen him start to open the wrong door when he was going to be by himself because he's so used to having one of us drive him around.
Oh, yeah.
But yes, I do tons of Hank Hill stories. Let me tell you, that guy is crazy. But, and those were naturally aspirated combos, obviously. The funny thing is he was sponsored by Ford for all those years, and they had Ford stickers on the valve covers, but they were GM Performance 502s in everything but the Pro Stockers. The Pro Stockers were Chevrolets, but they weren't crate motors like the Super Comp cars and stuff. But, the power adder world, you guys are so used to it in the radial racing, pro mod, etc., all the fast heads up stuff. But I know, Dillard, that you've had more and more customers that are also coming to you for top dragster, top sportsman, some of these crazy fast bracket cars and everything. Pete, are you seeing that same kind of thing?
We occasionally see some, but I really don't do a whole lot there. Not because I don't want to. It just people bring what you're known for.
Right.
People show up in my door with turbo stuff.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think you guys, the Procharger world has just become such a big deal for you guys, right, Dillard? Is that
It has.
if you had to choose a supercharger, is that the one you like the most?
I don't know. We did the screw deal,
Yep.
but when we did the screw deal, the EFI just wasn't. The EFI was capable of running the motor no problem, but back then we couldn't get a no good O2 reading. So the reason that we peeled away from the screw deal, it made good power. We ran it a lot. We had to run it rich because you never had really good fuel control.
Right.
So when we came back out with this Procharger deal, we did it again, and we were just determined we're going to make this O2 deal work better, and we were still trying to pick up individual tubes.
Yeah.
And we went out for a few events. Car ran really good, but we couldn't fine tune the motor the way we wanted to. Again, you do plugs, you do EGTs. That's 90% of the battle, but you still want to have a correcting O2. That's what fuel injection is all about, if you can.
Right.
So we just couldn't do that. And the last thing you want to do is go sell fuel injection setup to somebody that you can't use the O2. That's not a good, from customer support side, we didn't want to get into that one.
Right.
So we backed off from the blower deal when we went back with the Procharger and had the opportunity. Took us about 2 or 3 events, and Petty was getting frustrated. And he's like, you know what? Weld a tube all the way across every one of those primaries, put the O2 over here, and then exit it like another primary. We're like, all right. So we do it for him and go out. And now the O2 on a Procharger or a Roots or anything is better than the O2 on a turbo. We get a better O2 reading now from the moment you fire the motor.
Yeah.
So you shut it off than we did with even a turbo deal. Where before, you wouldn't even get an O2 reading until you release the trans brake, and it would start to read decently. But then if you were a little rich, you'd see it. If you were really rich, it'd show lean.
Yep.
If you were a little lean, you'd see it. If you were really lean, it'd show rich. So it'd throw the fuel system backwards. So, now that we've got that O2 deal, that's when it went there and went 358 at Sweet 16, and we really got it running good. That's because we just finally got the O2 to where we could actually tune the engine, like fine tune it. Because even from 0 to 100 feet with a blower deal, you're so limited on power that if your fuel tune-up's not right there, I mean, you're at 150, 200 feet, you're just along for the ride after that. It's all everything we got to do with those things in the first 100 feet. So because of all that, now we full circle came back and we're doing a Roots deal right now. So we got a Roots deal going together for PDRA and NHRA, 2 different cars. And we decided this time to try to streamline this deal a little bit more and just make it simple to start. I'm not going to say that we won't go full EFI later. We kept the barrel valve up top. It's mechanical on the top. Still got a pump loop, still got a barrel valve, but no lean outs, no nothing. We're just running pump loop and a barrel valve with a main jet on the top. And because the blower guys like Al Billis is who we're working with, he already knows what his blower wants. He already knows the gallons per minute it wants. So we dynoed it mechanical last week, and we checked fuel after the barrel valve, after the hat block, and we knew exactly what was going in the blower and the hat to the 10th of a gallon. So we did a nostalgia style fuel pump with two sections. Yeah. So we're running one section, mechanical, and we got a completely different flow rate on the other section for the EFI. And we dynoed it Monday with the hybrid deal. The EFI and mechanical went flawless. We picked up 120 in low gear, 50 all the way through the curve, perfect O2 readings, just like we thought. It's no different than tuning a Procharger motor at that point. I mean, it's just an EFI car. The only reason we were struggling before is because we just didn't have a good O2 reading. And it still ran. Like even the screw deal, we went 356 at 214 and ran good, but you just want control. It might as well be mechanical the way we were running. So we're excited about that. We're going to get that out, the NHRA here. If NHRA goes off, we're going to get it out here soon, and the same with PDRA.
Well, and that leads me to my last question. The producers are telling me we got to wrap it up, but I wanted to ask you, Pete, what is the most challenging combo to tune? Is an NA combo or a boosted combo or a nitrous combo more challenging to tune?
Well, I can't speak to upper level, nitrous stuff anymore, so I will kind of leave that one out. But in my opinion, the turbo stuff is still power management is more difficult. The blower stuff, your timing, it controls the crank speed, which controls the boost. So they're connected to each other. So they're, in my opinion, they're a lot more responsive. With the turbos, literally sometimes things we're doing to manage power in the turbo is the same thing you do on the starting line to make more boost, right? So you're telling the thing to go faster and slower at the same time.
Right.
So there's just a lot more to controlling the turbo beast, in my opinion.
Dillard, do you agree with that? You're not.
Oh, it's so monumentally different that if you're a great turbo tuner, you can take a blower car and just
instantly faster.
And just like it's just because even a turbo deal, you have no downforce. So a turbo guy knows chassis and four link and weight more than anybody on at the racetrack. And
right.
I'm not saying that because like, oh, we know more than, no, like you have to. You have no downforce. So
right.
everything you're doing every run, you really are moving the four link. You really are changing, ride heights and front strut travel and all these things that a blower guy, I mean, yeah, they might mess with it, but they've been so accustomed to having downforce that they just don't have to put that kind of effort into it. So if you take a guy that's had that much effort into a turbo deal and give him a blower car and he knows how to move all these things and just fine tune that suspension to get what they want, it's fun. It's fun. It's like somebody comes to me now and says, hey, we want to go after a championship, turbo or a blower. It's like, well, like if I can have Pete or I can have Petty at every race, 100% focused on my car, I'd still probably pick a turbo. But if somebody has to spread the load and we don't get the support we would normally get and we're going after a championship, blower all the way. Yeah, I mean, like you could tune 3 blower cars. Like Pete could go tune 3 blower cars.
Yeah, and remotely is easier.
Yes.
Because the blower does the same thing every time,
That's
generally speaking. Where the turbo, there can be so many little factors that piss it off, and it made a pound extra boost on the 2-step and you have to have a lot of experience with that to know why it maybe did that, and with the blower, that's just not an issue. It doesn't do that,
I love it. Well, guys, on that note, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us this show. I appreciate you guys sticking with it. We had a third guest who just wasn't able to join us today. So, but that's it. We're all done. This is episode number 8 of Drag Racing Friends. And thank you, Eric Dillard. Thank you, Peter Harrell. Barrett Green for being my partner in crime on this deal. I think the debate, nitrous versus blowers versus turbos, oh my, will always be waged, but I stand by my previous statement. If they make power, I love them all, and I believe, personally, you should always be able to add nitrous to any boosted combination if only the rules would allow it. So thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. We will see you next time.
Peace.